With a weapon twice the size of her body, she's more than just a yordle with a hammer, no matter what she says. This week we explore Poppy, Keeper of the Hammer. Welcome to Runeterra Tourist. I'm Patrick. I don't know anything about these people yet, so let's learn about them together. Released way back in 2010, Poppy in League of Legends is more of a defensive fighter, a tank built around staying in front of her allies and stopping enemies from reaching them. Her passive gives her a throwable buckler that grants her a temporary shield when she collects it. Her W, Steadfast Presence, increases her armor and magic resistance passively, and when activated, stops nearby enemies from dashing, allowing her to protect her allies. She can charge towards enemies, stunning them if they hit a wall, and her ultimate Keeper's Verdict charges up and launches a target right across the map, just momentarily relocating them, if you will. So when the cards got spoiled, Body and Order made sense. Orange and yellow cards, I could totally see that, especially it seems like that's the Demacian colors right there. But XP accumulation is an interesting mechanic, and the signature spell bounces a unit to the top of the deck or the bottom, depending on what the opponent wants to do. It seemed like a theme pasted on to a legend rather because Riot was just really eager to have XP legends in this game, and Poppy seemed to be a recipient of that. And if we're going by League of Legends, I would have assumed that it would be maybe a more hold-focused legend with control because of the yellow and buffs because of the orange. But if we're including Legends of Runeterra mechanics, that makes even more sense with orange. Maybe they'd even give her a defensive lean that could kind of get over the hump on attack, since she does have a hammer after all. All of that and a signature spell that counters or disrupts the opponent's game plan. I mean, that seemed like that would be the dream for a Poppy build. I figured Riot would take care of Poppy because she's one of the most popular champions in League of Legends, not just due to her competitive performance. I mean, she kind of fluctuates between tiers every now and then, but because she is who she is. She has this devoted fan base that considers her adjusted lore one of the most well-written in the game. I mean, when you think of where she came from with the old lore, her name coming from the sprightly sounds that sparks make as they leapt from her father's forge, that's quite something. But being this touted weapon maker seeking to avenge her dead father, Blomgren, another heck of a name, after they were attacked by Noxus assassins. It just wasn't even remotely original. I mean, speaking of remotely original, the hammer's name was Womper. Womper, come on now. We can do better than that. So the reworked lore is just so much better. So what were we left with? Most yordles embrace the chaotic whimsy of their nature, but Poppy found it alienating, driven instead by this desire to find her own purpose. So she ventured off, leaving Bandle City behind. Eventually, she arrived at the human lands of Western Valoran, where she encountered numerous caravans of weary settlers. She was drawn to their discipline, structure, and coordination, working together to create something greater than themselves, by their own hand and by their own hard work, not by magic. Among them was their commanding officer named Orlan, who wore this gleaming steel plate and swung a massive battle hammer with surprising alacrity for his size, and rumored to have the power to level mountains and tear the earth asunder. He was able to inspire and uplift his people, leading by example, and this fascinated Poppy. And so it led her to make the most important decision of her life. She revealed herself to him, which was the first time she had ever done that with a human. It was a bit awkward at first, and they had numerous questions for one another, but eventually an inseparable bond was formed, and Orlan became her mentor. She accompanied Orlan to the kingdom of Demacia, this nation where all were welcome regardless of background, so long as they contributed to the greater good. During this time, Orlan became an admired hero throughout the young kingdom, and Poppy became his most devoted companion. However, the lives of men is cruelly short, and so Orlan, on his deathbed, told Poppy the truth about the hammer, that it was never meant for him. It was meant for the true hero of Demacia, the one who would keep Demacia whole. Orlan gave Poppy the hammer, and she solemnly vowed to her dying friend that she would one day find this hero and entrust him with the weapon. In all her time carrying this hammer, fighting with it, swinging it with this ease as if she was born with it in her hands, it never occurred to Poppy, someone who lacks such an ego, that it might be she who is the hero that Orlan was speaking of. Her short story, The Slayer, describes one such moment in her travels after she defeats this briar wolf, and she reaches this small village after seeing a notice inviting everyone to celebrate the Festival of the Slayer. This has to be where the hero is, she thought to herself, as it was a celebration to honor this monster hunter, and surely this was the very one that she has been seeking all of this time. Standing amongst several Demacian officials, a speaker proclaimed that while the hunter chose to remain anonymous, it wouldn't prevent them from celebrating the numerous deeds like saving the farms and villages from wyverns and rabid wolves and bandits. In fact, just a few weeks prior, the hero was spotted near the town of Ewendale, leaving the first eyewitness accounts of his appearance. And so they crafted this stone statue to honor this hero, standing 7 feet tall, armored in plate mail, and ripped like a bodybuilder. This little girl points out to her father that Poppy, hey, that must be the hero. And of course, the dad shrugs it off and says that Poppy is way too short to be such a hero. Good old stereotypes. There's also a comic, A Hero's Calling, that is one such tale of her search, and amidst her centuries-long quest, she would occasionally come across those who she initially thought was the one worthy of carrying this hammer, except each one ended in failure, often with the would-be hero meeting a very tragic fate. She eventually arrives at a remote corner in Demacia among many who have the appearance of the hero, but she doesn't rush it, noting that the hero would eventually reveal himself in time. Just then a Cragmaw attacks, and this tall, dashing warrior with long blonde locks directs everyone to safety, calling for a halberd, and it breaks mid-attack, and so he calls for another weapon. And this is when Poppy, convinced that this must be the hero, tosses him the hammer, proudly remarking that the hammer of Orlan will be the one that this true hero will use to claim his title as the true hero of Demacia. So the hero swings the mighty hammer and then immediately dies. He gets speared by a Cragmaw claw. Poppy laments yet another death, feeling that she is not worthy of this quest, searching for this true hero, but the Cragmaw still lives, and it's still wreaking havoc on this village and the stone walls. And so, fearing for the villagers' safety, Poppy springs into action. She cracks the Cragmaw in its skull and defeating the terrorizing beasts. With that, she dusts off her hands and resumes her search, leaving the village behind. One thing I find interesting is that Demacia famously persecutes magic users, and Yordles famously have innate magical abilities, and maybe it's because Poppy doesn't really cast spells in the typical way, but she's never faced persecution herself. She's allowed to roam freely. Perhaps it's payment for all of her good deeds and service. I also find it kind of funny that the hammer itself reminds me a little bit of Mjolnir, the fact that it adjusts its weight to the wielder and allows for full potential to the true hero. Very similar to Thor, how his hammer adjusts to him and that it always returns to him, knowing that Thor is worthy of holding it, as Thor also knows that he is worthy. But Poppy genuinely does not see it, and she doesn't believe that she is the true wielder, just conveniently adjusting to her weight. But all things considered, she still continues her search for the one true hero. So in League of Legends, she's very protective of her allies. She has this fine balance between aggression and defense, and removes threats, albeit somewhat non-lethally, and absorbs the damage for her allies, just like a good tank. In Legends of Runeterra, she's a 4-cost champion, and whenever she attacks, she grants allies with equal or less power than her a +1/+1 buff, and becoming this +2/+2 and granting impact at level 2. So this aggressive and rally-focused legend. In Riftbound, however, they focus more on XP, this new mechanic that's been built into the Unleashed set. And so starting with her legend, Poppy, Keeper of the Hammer, you can see she is in body and order domains, and she has the ability when you hold, gain 1 XP, as well as spend 3 XP and exhaust this card to draw 1 card. So without the help of any other cards, it's 3 holds, exhaust this, and draw a card. So this is a really slow, almost reactive legend ability, right? I suppose it kind of mirrors the Steadfast Presence, the League of Legends W ability, this defensive strength that compounds over time, but doing so through XP kind of feels awkward mechanically, like this underpowered execution of that ability, if at all. I mean, she deserves a little bit more a dynamic legend ability, I would think, given her character. The signature spell is one that's really doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And that signature spell is Keeper's Verdict, a 2 energy cost, 2 power spell, which reads: action, you play on your turn or in showdowns, choose an enemy unit at a battlefield, its owner places it on the top or bottom of their main deck. So this one's named directly after her League of Legends ultimate, and in League of Legends, Keeper's Verdict launches the enemies directly across the map, basically. The Riftbound version here removes the threat from the battlefield without killing it, and so it's kind of closer to the Legend of Runeterra version, where Keeper's Verdict puts the unit on top of their deck. So it comes back next turn, similar to what can happen here in Riftbound. In Riftbound, the controller gets to choose whether it's on top or bottom, and so it can either get replayed immediately next turn, or they can recycle it. Gives them a little bit more options. And so also note that this is a spell, and Riot chose not to make Poppy's signature a gear, like an equipment thing. Perhaps if they would have gone the equipment route, she would have been released in Spirit Forge, which was the set that was equipment focused. It's likely that because of her jungler roots, they really wanted to have her in Unleashed, and so they wanted to make sure that this effect is not as easy to pop off as frequently as having a card just stationary in your base. So they kind of wanted to give it that charged up ultimate feel, I suppose. It's still a really effective spell. Her rare champion unit out of body is Poppy Paragon, a 5 energy cost, 5 might unit with deflect, so you have to pay a power to choose it with a spell or an ability. And when you play me, if an opponent's score is within 3 points of the victory score, ready me and gain 3 XP. So you only get the full value out of this unit when the game is kind of coming to an end, and so it seems like it's the most desperate situation, which I guess kind of maps to the League of Legends ability Steadfast Presence, where it really pops off when your health is at 40% or low. Deflect makes her hard to target, so I guess that kind of also sticks with the Steadfast Presence mapping, and maybe even Iron Ambassador, that whole buckler benefit where she picks it up and gets a shield. Other than that, however, there really isn't much to this unit. I mean, it's a tough, mighty unit at 5 might, and so there's something there flavor-wise, I guess. But other than that, kind of generic. Finally, her epic champion unit out of order is Poppy, Defender of the Meek, a 6 energy, 1 order power costed unit with 5 might. You may spend 3 XP as an additional cost to play me. If you do, I cost 3 energy less. It has Ambush, where you can play the unit as a reaction to a battlefield where you have units, and it has Tank, where it must be assigned combat damage first. So Tank, I mean, that's a pretty direct relation to her League of Legends identity, and Ambush allows her to arrive suddenly, so maybe it's kind of like Heroic Charge, where she can dash and help her allies out in a pinch. The XP cost reduction is something, I mean, it's earned passively through her legend ability based off of holds, or you can acquire it by the hunt keyword on other units, the keyword that allows you to gain XP for conquer or hunt. But given how little XP support there is in this set so far, at the moment it's a little underwhelming, and it doesn't really speak to Poppy's abilities in League of Legends or Legend of Runeterra at all. It also has the dreaded 1 power cost there, so that greatly hinders it from being played from the champion zone. And so the Paragon champion unit, while not that great, probably takes that spot on this fact alone, despite being equally underwhelming. So Poppy runs body in order, orange and yellow, and the game plan seems to want you to hold, or at least do some kind of control through that, accumulating XP through holding or conquering through other units' hunt keyword. Surprising that neither one of her units, especially the orange one, has hunt, but I guess that's for another discussion. But then her legend ability can also give that. Maybe she gets a little help from this big frog, using Keeper's Verdict to remove key threats to help ensure that game plan, and then using the Paragon as a clutch play to help really drive things home when the opponent is kind of close to winning and catch you back up. Initially, it seems like Riot's trying to hint to you that it wants you to go through the hold route, using big creatures that allow you to collect XP through these big holds or bouncing or killing threats. But I kind of think it's a little bit better in the mid-range version, something that's using Nidalee. That's just great for any orange deck, really. Or a little Nyla action, just a little bit more flexibility, especially given that at this stage, we just don't have as much XP support. The legend ability is kind of slow, and I think that's the deck's main limitation. 3 XP and exhausting the card for 1 card draw is kind of an investment. And at this stage, since we don't have as much XP in the game, it's a little hard to come by. There's a card in Order, Heroic Charge, that buffs a friendly unit while stunning an enemy unit. And so this could relate to her League of Legends abilities, punishing dashers and slowing them down through Steadfast Presence or Hammer Shock, or how charging at an enemy unit into a wall stuns it. Oddly, its name is one of Poppy's abilities in League of Legends, and yet that card gets a pretty generic filter. It can be used by any Order legend. Leona is very grateful for this. Obviously, this isn't the only time this has ever happened in the game, but it is kind of an interesting thought, basically. But most of Poppy's League of Legends abilities are from her attacking. It wasn't really translated over here. This seems to be more defensive oriented, especially getting you benefits for holding. And outside of the Keeper's Verdict, there really isn't much that ports over from Legends of Runeterra over here either. Unfortunately, as a recording, the best of Poppy decks in our queues tend to be Dazzling Aurora decks, and it seems like orange-yellow are great fits for it, unfortunately. Poppy, Fiora, Garen is just there. Set's doing his own thing, so mercifully we don't have all of these orange legends going that route. Despite the XP discount and the tank keyword to absorb pressure, the Defender of the Meek version doesn't really see a lot of play, especially because of these Aurora builds. Perhaps once XP becomes better supported, we'll see a little bit more variety in the Poppy builds that we see, somewhat getting away from these Aurora lists. After all, we're kind of seeing it now with Kha'Zix burning Aurora lists. Of course, he has the benefit of having purple, and purple's pretty strong right now. What makes the Riftbound cards and synergies, or lack thereof, so painful is that I actually really like the lore. This wholesome Yordle who doesn't know that she's the hero. This whole, the hero you've been searching for all these centuries is inside you kind of thing. It's actually pretty perfect for an unassuming and humble champion amidst a sea of aspiring legends. A hero's calling being the perfect icing on the cake, rounding out her lore really, really well. It's a great pivot away from the generic, my family died and now I seek revenge, through being a Yordle ambassador to Demacia storyline, very Bruce Wayne-esque, right? But without having to do the whole anti-hero thing or doing the over-the-top zealous thing. We've already got Garen for that, right? Speaking of Demacians. I really wish Riot would have done a better job of making Poppy more viable in this meta outside of Dazzling Aurora decks. We're kind of already seeing that now, orange and yellow decks making this really good surgence into the meta, so it would have been neat to see some support for her. Maybe some designs that leaned a little bit more into the aggressive part of this tank build that she typically has, some kind of portion into her League of Legends abilities, or even some of the buffing mechanics from Legends of Runeterra. The XP version seems a little too pasted on for such an excellent champion. And with that, that's all 12 Unleashed Legends. We did it. And so we started back in April with Diana and arrived here. So if you've been following me all this time, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. That was a lot of lore to get through. So for Poppy players, what are your thoughts on her League of Legends gameplay? And how do you think Riot did in their approach to her Riftbound mechanics? And what am I missing about her story? Let me know in the comments below. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. New episodes drop weekly, and now with the Unleash Legends completed, I've got some older Legends I should go back and take a visit before the Vendetta previews start. So subscribe if that sounds like your kind of thing, and until next time, thanks for watching.